Secret Invasion, Episode 5. This is our review. Today it's just me and Brandon again.
Likely
Robert
next week
will
as well. Like,
Robert will be chiming in at some point. We'll see. We'll get
yeah.
we'll get his we'll get his viewpoint on something. Right. So we've both seen the episode yesterday, and this will be a spoiler-free review for the first few minutes, and then we'll let you know when it goes to spoiler, and then that's your time to shove off.
Yeah.
Um, so why don't we start with just general opinions of this episode, and then maybe how it connects to the rest of the series, where
Okay.
it places in the rest of the series, and then we'll move on to more spoilery things.
I don't know if this could be a hot take or not, but I think this is the best episode. Not to say it's like sick, but I think just because a lot of stuff happens and it just feels like the ball's rolling now. Where I'm like, okay, stuff's actually tying in, stuff's actually starting to get resolved, kind of thing.
Okay.
I feel like that's where maybe I'm just blinded by stuff actually being like stuff actually happening rather than it being good. Obviously, I have my criticisms and stuff, but I think I might put this at the top so far. I'm prepared to be disappointed for the next episode though,
Okay.
because that always happens. So, what about
Right.
you?
I'm gonna say the total opposite and
Oh,
confuse our audience.
oh,
uh,
interesting.
I think I'm kind of done. I think I'm checked out with this series already. Like, it's not like I'm going in watching these episodes wanting them to be bad, because I want them to be good and I want to enjoy them. But I can't lie, that I had a really hard time like buying any of this again. I just feel like I kind of got to the end of this episode and I just got the feeling we've been treading water. And even though I think you're right, there is more stuff happening in this episode. To me, it doesn't feel like things are happening in the correct way. It feels like we're really treading water, and it feels like all that's happening is at the first half of the episode to me is just trying to resolve whatever happened that they set up as a hook in the end of the last episode, and then the second half of each episode just seems to be setting up the next episode, and it's like this really weird curve of like I feel like nothing's happening, but they're trying to connect events between episodes, but I don't feel like any of them are like I don't feel like anything's happening, even though there are events that are being connected over episodes. It's
Yeah,
really strange.
I get that. I
Um,
get that.
and even this
Yeah,
episode, it just felt like some things happened because they need to happen because this is the penultimate episode, rather than oh, we probably should have set things up like this a bit more. That tends to be a theme in my head. Is just I kind of like what they're putting out, right? I kind of like what they're putting down on the table, but one, I feel like most of what they put down is not earned, and we'll get into specifics what that is later. That's sometimes character, it's sometimes actual like events and moments and stuff like that. But then there's also it just feels like I'm being like having the rug just slowly pulled out from under my feet every week. But I don't know, it doesn't feel like anything's emotionally engaging me or I'm like sucked in. Um, I do think I think I liked Nick Fury a bit more in this episode. I think because one of our criticisms in the last few episodes was doesn't feel like Nick Fury.
yeah. I think
He fit,
because of what's happened, he kind of has to be the old Nick Fury, So it's like, oh, he's been forced into being like this secretive
yeah,
person and all that stuff. He still learns.
but
You
in
still
terms
learn
of where,
stuff, but you don't. It's not like the same that's been
yeah,
up to this point.
it's I think probably in terms of where the other this places in terms of the other episodes. I think just for me, the further the series goes on, the less I like it. So I think my curve is literally episode one is is probably my favorite, and then episode two, and then episode three, and then four, and four is probably the biggest dip I would say. I think five's probably well maybe five's a little better than four, but
Mm.
I still think it's not great to be honest. I don't know, like it's just, and the thing is as well, I think just for the audience's sake, we should say that me and Brandon haven't talked about this since we've seen the episode. This is our first time
Yeah,
talking
we
about it. But
typically don't. Yeah.
two, neither of us have read the Secret Invasion comic series, so we know that I think we're aware that the scope of the show is completely different from the comics. So we don't have any expectations in that sense
Yeah,
that
I've
are
got nothing
not being
to
met.
compare it to really,
So
except like
honestly,
from word from what we've heard.
yeah,
Like, because I've heard tiny stuff, but nothing massive.
honestly, I'm okay with like the scale of the show and like what they're putting down. I'm I'm willing to buy like the spy espionage thing in terms of shapeshifters, and I quite like that pair and that idea. Again, I quite like what they're putting down, but I don't know. I wouldn't rate this high, honestly. I think this is probably going to be a really forgettable show in a good few months, if that.
I agree with that. It's definitely not the Andor of Marvel as everyone was hoping. Um,
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think you need a big scale to make something memorable because, like even though Andor probably had a massive budget, right? Even though it's Star Wars, it felt smaller than like Star Wars usually does.
yeah,
But you're right. Like, I think a spy espionage thriller kind of thing with shapeshifters can work really well. I just feel like this has not used any of those concepts
hmm
to the most of its potential. And that's a big thing for me is I think this is probably in terms of how we review things in general, right? Is I tend to really knock points down, really knock films or media down for things that have potential that don't use them. And I think
yeah,
that's like a big thing for me that maybe is not, I think for the audience's sake, that's something that maybe doesn't, um, that Robert or Brandon maybe don't put as much weight on when they're reviewing something. But my reviews tend to be quite heavily based on my expectations, based on what they're telling me early on
yeah,
and what they're putting forward and the ideas they're putting forward. And if they don't meet my expectations there, not that I'm saying I'm a better writer or anything like that, or that my expectations are better than what they would have done, but in my opinion, I'm not getting what I want out of this, right?
yeah,
I think that's the short and sweet way to put it. Is I'm not. I like what they're doing, but I'm not getting out of it what I want. Um,
yeah.
so I mean, at least this might be an interesting episode for some discussion. So
I think it will be. I'm interested. It's not like I'm fully positive of it either.
no, but it's nice to have a little variety, right?
Yeah.
Um,
All right
but yeah,
then.
again, I last thing I just want to reiterate again. I want to like this show, and I'm not hate watching the show, and I'm not going episode to episode going, oh, last week's episode was crap, so I'm just gonna like hate on this one. I want this to do well. I really want this show. I wanted this week's one to be like, oh yeah, well we've hit a little bit of a dip, and you've maybe not liked what you've seen so far, but this is the big turnaround. This is the penultimate episode. This is where it swell. You get the big swell before the final battle or before the finale, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you get whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
It's better than
I'm
She-Hulk, for sure.
that's not exactly a high bar
It's the high bar. It's the high
yeah
bar.
to clear. So I guess by default, if the show's like competent somewhat, then yeah, it's better than She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Um, right.
All right then.
I am. I think that's a pretty well. So sorry for that, audience, because Brandon quite likes it and I quite don't.
Mm.
So there you
Interesting.
go. Go see it yourself and see who you agree with. Okay. So spoilers, spoilers. Right? Spoilers.
All
Go.
right.
Right. Okay. So we start off, and last week's episode we had Talos die or
Which
Talos,
is
because
like confirmed now. Like I was kind of questioning it last time, but now it's like, yeah,
yep,
he's dead. So I'm like, oh like damn it. Like, shoot.
yeah.
Um, it's a
But
shame.
again, I think just as a carryover, in case you haven't seen episode four, go watch episode four. But if you haven't, and you're if you're a stubborn motherfucker and you just want to watch this episode and that one alone, last week I think we were all pretty disappointed with Talos' death. Not just because it happened, but also like for me personally, the way it happened never got the emotional reaction that I expected from a character that I liked.
Yeah,
So
because he was all our
this is
favorites, right? Like he was
yeah,
easily like maybe not easily, but he was our favorite in the show, and for him to be taken out like
yeah.
that, I guess like the meaning behind his death is going to mean something, which I can tell just by this episode alone. They're gonna set that up, um, as in like oh no, a scroll saved the president, not like try to screw you over. Kind of thing. I just know that's going to happen. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, it just didn't have that impact of oh, Talos is dead. You know,
I feel
like and
more.
we didn't even get too much time with him either because he was barely in. I don't remember him being
Th-
in a lot of Captain
there
Marvel.
was uh, I don't remember much of that movie to be honest.
Yeah,
I couldn't
that's
tell
one of
you.
the more forgettable ones in my opinion. But yeah, so it's
But
just like I just wish I had more, man.
the other thing is I his death is kind of more of a feeling of butthurt rather than oh like sympathy or empathy for the characters or even Nick Fury just to be like oh well he's lost his partner like yeah I'm like all right well I can see he's sad but again I'm not fully on board with what they're selling me.
Did you feel the him being missing in this episode?
Yeah,
Yeah,
There
Yeah.
was I can't remember exactly when it was, but there was a scene where Nick was on his own, and I was like, man, I could really use some Nick and some Talos duo time. Yeah. Um, Again, this is a shorter episode. This is I think they've kind of smoothed out to the kind of the 40-minute mark,
To be
35,
honest, I thought the pacing
40-minute
in this
mark.
one was pretty good though. It didn't feel short. Like I think it played pretty well. I think anyway.
Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't say it was a slog like maybe some of the other episodes. Oh, I wouldn't say, to be honest, I wouldn't say the show's had bad pacing in general. I think it's been okay. I wouldn't say most of it's been a slog, but um, anyway, so we open up on the president in the hospital. Nick's single-handedly taking him into the hospital because apparently the president can't afford fucking more bodyguards to bring him into hospital. I don't know, but so for some reason Nick Fury's there, and I did like the little bit where it was like he's not saying much, but like um he like sits down on the chair outside the door, right, with a gun, and he's like,
I like that. I like
yeah,
that.
I like that.
I was
That
like,
was a nice
that's
little
Nick
bit.
Fury. Just like
Yeah,
he got a freaking chair and
and I think
guns in.
that might tie into the monologue at the end, which I think I'll come back to because that was quite a big moment, right?
Okay.
Um, I think I'll try and log that in my head to bring that up. My point on that a bit. And then I guess we cut to Gravik being a dickhead to his people, and this is where the potential starts to come into my head, where I'm like, we haven't seen these people love Gravik, so it means nothing when they turn against him
Yep. I
to
agree with
me.
that.
And that's the big thing that's bothering me. And I said this in the other episodes. I was like, when you look at how people are maneuvered into doing things that they don't want to do, whether it's under some sort of cult or some sort of political regime, obviously there's people who aren't fully on board and there's people who are, and people get caught up more or less. But you always have this figurehead,
Yep.
and Gravik is supposed to be that figurehead. Whether it's Charles Manson, whether it's Adolf Hitler, whether it's Joseph Stalin, doesn't matter. They all have this presence, right? Whether that's good or bad, it's usually
Yeah.
bad, but they have this presence that at least you can kind of semi understand how people might be forced into feeling this way. But I just don't feel like this guy has enough gravitas or enough presence to actually encourage these people to get off their fucking couch. Never mind to like try and take over the world.
Yeah.
He just falls so fucking flat. It's ridiculous. And even when he's trying to be menacing, we said this before. Like Ben Mendelsohn's out the picture, but in the previous episode or the episode before that, there was a scene where they were in the room together, and Ben Mendelsohn was more intimidating than the villain. And I'm like, there is no time when this should be a
Yeah.
thing, right? The only time this is a thing is when you remove that character. Then I guess you have I guess that because like so my example would be like Simba is the protagonist, right?
Yeah.
Of Lion King, and the only person who actually overshadows Scar at the beginning of the film
Mufasa.
is Mufasa, and
Yeah.
then he's out the picture.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the kind of relationship they
But
have
but
with
Scar had a
Ben Mendelsohn.
presence though. You know what I mean? Like Scar had something about him. This guy doesn't. You,
Well,
you know?
the difference is right. The difference is Gravik is actually supposed to be Mufasa in this case in terms of his like brute headedness,
Yeah.
right? Talos is not meant to be the brute, and yet in a room he comes across more of a brute than Gravik does.
Yeah. After watching this, especially this episode, I kind of came with this conclusion where Gravik. There's a difference between showing like how do I word this? Like
Doing things
there's a
that should
difference
be,
between like
yeah,
okay, telling me this is a leader and show me that this is the leader, and all they've done is tell me that Graphic is their leader, and they've never proven why. It just feels like he's just like fair enough, he's probably like a good enough like bodyguard or like top guy or whatever, but he doesn't feel like the top like the leader of the freaking
top
Skrulls.
G,
It just
yeah.
doesn't feel like that. But they
Doesn't
keep
feel like
telling me
top
that, and
Gravik.
I've never. I think you're right with the scene with Talos. It just sums it up. It's just like your main bad can't even like take over that scene. He's like they're literally in a cafe,
Well,
you
this
know.
is the thing, right? Is there are ways in which you can have, because I think if the reverse had been true, right? If I think because Talos has maybe had a bit more of a calm demeanor or a bit more of a weak demeanor from what we've seen.
Hmm.
I think the thing is I think they wanted to give Ben Mendelsohn a moment and they wanted to give Gravik a moment, and they did that in the same scene, which was the problem
Yeah, yeah,
because Ben Mendelsohn has way more presence than whoever plays Gravik. The other problem is that if we come back to our Scar and Mufasa example, you see Scar get intimidated by Mufasa. You see why he's below Mufasa, right? You
yeah,
understand exactly that relationship, but then you see that reversed through scheming
Hmm.
and like conniving, right?
Yeah.
And it's because the relationship's different, right? Scar's a
Yeah.
little puny lion. He can't have the brute force that Mufasa does. The
Yeah.
problem is
It was Brain
Gravik
versus
and
Brawn with
Talos.
those brothers. Like
Yeah,
that was the whole idea of it.
the the problem is in that cafe scene, they are both trying to attack each other on the same grounds of brawn and not brain, right? And that's why it fails. Because I think you need to have maybe, if you want to give Talos and Gravik a moment, you have them one up each other in different ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have Gravik be the more menacing presence, the one that's willing to do the things that that Talos isn't, and you maybe show like you maybe have like you basically give Ben Mendelsohn scenes to Gravik, and then you have maybe Ben Mendelsohn one him up in like like in terms of wisdom or like intelligence, something like that. That
Well,
shows that Gravik is off the edge
I thought
rather
they were
than
going to do that with him killing Gaia because like I said before, I thought they were going to do a thing where he was going to torment Talos, being like, "Oh, I've killed your daughter. Now what are you going to do?" And Talos was going to act emotionally and rash and not be smart as he is typically, and then that would prove why
right.
he isn't a good leader and why Gravik is a good leader because he's just proven that the ex leader isn't isn't good enough anymore. So you know what I mean? So it's just like that would have been really good. Again, I don't know
That's a
if the
good point.
actor can carry it because so far he hasn't for us. Again, we don't want to just blame the actor, but that's all we can do right now
Again,
until we hear
this could
L
be the
Spies.
direction he's been given. The script we've not seen the scripts. We've not seen behind the scenes. We don't know whose fault this
Yeah,
is, but
and I'm
it's
sure he's a good guy. Like no,
the
no
whole
way, no way,
conglomerate.
no, no
Yeah,
way.
the whole conglomerate that comes together from page to screen
Yeah,
in terms of Gravik somewhere has went wrong along the way.
yeah,
I think that's something that's been a constant across all these episodes and all of our reviews.
hmm,
So I don't think that's new news. I just think now we've seen his turning point, right? This is supposed to be him against the ropes, right? His big plan has failed in the last episode.
hmm,
He was trying to kill the president. To be honest, I don't think it really matters if he killed the president or not, right? Because they still attacked the president, so there's still precedent for Russia to, for the Americans to retaliate. I don't.
yeah,
They kind of made it out as if like, oh well, the president didn't die, so there's not going to be any retaliation. But it's like, yeah, but he easily could have died. Like there's still the idea of retaliation. I don't know. It seems a bit weird.
yeah,
The the other thing is we had this. I can't remember if it was last week as well, right? We had at the beginning of the series we had the Skrull, the Emilia Clarke's character, that Gaia. She
mhm,
like introduces him, right? The kind of the guy with like the hat
yeah.
and the big snow coat. Did he die last episode or is it this episode?
It was this
I
one.
think it was this
Yeah,
episode, right?
because
So he
he
kills.
speaks up, right? And then
Well,
he
there's one guy speaks up, and then the second guy gives him an eye, does he? And then he
Oh,
drags him out.
yeah, no, he. I think there's a fight scene later on where I think he dies in that.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Complete fucking waste. Like, what? Why are you dedicating time to that character? Like, you did. He literally just stared there, like that dumb meme with the fingers, and he's like, ooh. He just stared there
Yeah.
for like the whole season, and then just like ate shit. And I get that's his whole role is to put across the point that Gravik's off the edge, right?
Hmm.
That he's now purposefully driving fear into his own people because that's his last option to maintain power. The problem
Yeah.
is, again, we haven't seen him be charismatic enough to show that he has power over these people in any other way than fear.
Hmm.
So when he's just up in that fear, it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
something's went rashly wrong because I'm like, well, like we all expected this to happen, and it just feels like a fulfillment. Thing is, again, I'm not expecting things to be subverted all the time.
Hmm.
Obviously, the arc they were going for was that oh, these people love him, yada yada yada, and then oh, he goes off the end, and they start to realize that he's actually a tyrant. The
Yeah.
problem is he's not nuanced enough or interesting enough anywhere else in the series where you couldn't just be like, oh yeah, that moment's earned when he turns, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I really hate his powers as well. It actually really annoys me.
Again,
Like
Lego character creator. That's all I can think about when
it's
he's on.
like
I'm just like,
Groot's power is such a random one to take. It takes me out so much, and the CGI is really bad as well. Um,
um,
yeah, or at least I thought so.
again, CGI never clocked me. I was just kind of checked out the scene
It
already. I
just
reckon
stands.
because
It
I was
just
like,
sticks out. Like some of the CGI in, like for example, I think when their Skrull makeup in the sort of CGI to change them into Skrulls, I think looked great throughout,
yeah.
and the de-agings look great. But when they do super powers and stuff, it just looks bad,
Although
man.
sometimes I think the scene that we were talking about where the guy gets after the fight scene and the guy gets dragged out, he has a really fucking massive head because obviously it's like a
Yeah,
it's prosthetics over, and sometimes it's funny because they look a bit like bubble-headed, but like again. thing is, it's hard to excuse, right? Because you're like, one, it's a Marvel property, so it should look good, but two, it's a TV show with a budget spread over 8 hours as opposed to, or well, probably closer to like 5 or 4 hours than like two for a usual Marvel thing, right?
Yeah,
But um,
yeah.
anything else to say about Gravik before we move on to Rhodey, maybe?
Um, no, no, I think there's some graphic stuff later on, but
Cool.
I think it
Yeah.
ties into later stuff.
Same.
So
So then you have,
yeah,
so after Gravik's lost his little he's had his little tantrum.
there's a tantrum.
Yeah, go sit on the bottom step, Gravik, because honestly, it's like watching a toddler.
Yeah,
We get back to the hospital, and Rhodey's a dick again, because obviously it's not Rhodey, but Samuel what's Nick Fury has like clocked. Whether he clocked earlier and he didn't let us know, or whether he's like now clocked that it just makes sense for Rhodey to be a. Oh, I guess his wife would have told him, right? Maybe,
maybe. Yeah.
or maybe he just
No, he did
Well,
know.
I guess he
Didn't
maybe.
he overheard a phone call? Member, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna just say,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's right. I just clocked that as well. Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, so we get him, and he's like, "I'm gonna blow your fucking brains out, you damn Skrull." And he's like, "Oh, you can't do that, 'cause that you killing Maria Hill." And he's like, "You're gonna be the most wanted criminal in the world." And I'm like, "But again, no one should know who Maria Hill is, right? It's
Or
not
Nick
like she's
Fury. That's what I mean. Like
yeah
both of them should be like undercover.
incognito. Yeah, nobody
Mate,
knows who
people
these
think Nick
people
Fury's
are.
dead. We just shown that later in the episode. He's got freaking tombstones all over the joint. People think Nick Fury's
Yeah,
not
and
even he doesn't exist.
again, no one should know who Maria Hill is. So when they're like, "Oh, an agent got killed by another agent," people are gonna be like,
Who got shot
"Okay,
by who? Like
yeah,
like that's literally like
okay,
if in James Bond they were like, "Oh my God, James, everyone's gonna know about you," and it's like, mate, like nobody knows me.
nobody should."
Nobody
Yeah,
knows me. No one gives a crap, mate. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's so
it,
weird. It's so
it's weird.
bizarre. And it's like who you try to
Um,
prove it to? Like it's the public, because the government already know. So because like they've got the
yeah,
footage. Stupid man. Honestly, I don't think I like Rudy as a scroll. I think it really puts me off. I know you have to do it because it's the show. Like, oh, there's going to be a big secret. Who's a scroll? Oh, it's Rudy. I don't know how long he's been a scroll for. Based on, I've read a Kevin Feige comment, and he said he's been a scroll for a long time, so it's been longer than the show. I don't know when he started or if he's been it the whole time. That wasn't confirmed, but I'm not a
yeah.
fan of it, man, because it's got a complete different character, and I know that's the point, but I don't like it because it just like because I feel like it's gonna ruin my view of him watching the old films because I'm gonna be like, oh, he's a scroll. He's pretending to be
It
Tony's pal
depends.
or whatever. Like
It
Tony and him
depends
aren't real
next.
pals. He's just being undercover. It's gonna put me off.
It
Um,
depends next episode if they give like a definite answer to like, oh, this is when it happened,
yeah,
or if they're like, oh, they still leave it ambiguous because they think it's artsy or whatever the fuck.
the only way I could see it working is if he came in after Rudy got his legs busted in Civil War, and he took
Well,
his place after that, maybe.
I'd read a theory that the reason he survived that fall was because he was a Skrull,
Ah, I see. All right, okay,
but
interesting, interesting.
but who the fuck knows, mate? They definitely didn't plan
But yeah,
that.
it really aggravates me, and it's like I don't know. I don't. It depends what they do with the scrolls and stuff going forward, because I really don't know. Because right now they're focusing on the multiverse stuff, and even they can't
This
even do
is
that right. So it's like I don't know how they're going to do both. But like I just feel like Secret Invasion should be the main focus, and it
well,
being a side piece just really makes everything not feel important.
100% though. This is never going to be resolved in one episode. This is definitely carrying over either
Nah,
into another
yeah.
season or is going to be the focus of other
I'm
properties.
I'm pretty sure it ties into the Marvels movie
Right. Well, I guess you would expect that, right?
because Nick
But
Fury's in the trailer, so you're like, well, he's not dead. So
oh, I suppose
unless a scroll takes
honestly,
over. Oh.
I thought that trailer looked okay, but I completely forgot watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so you get that scene, and then he's got all the guns on him, and it's like, oh yeah, Rudy's gotten by the balls again, and it's like, okay, like we haven't moved anywhere then. Like that whole confrontation kind of meant nothing. And then we come back to Olivia Colman, which she was kind of absent from one of the was it episode 3 or 4? There was one episode where I thought it felt really strange that they're kind of just like it felt a little bit like they're just throwing shit at the wall and they're just like, oh fuck, we forgot the Olivia Colman pile. Like oh man, there's like
Yeah.
a stinky pile of her now. There's excess. So now she comes in again. And to be honest, I feel like she's okay, but I feel like she's a little bit like, this is gonna sound weird until I explain why, but she's a little bit like Deadpool for me, where
Like just goofy, like goofy just for goofy's
n-
sake,
not
kind of.
not exactly that, but yes.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because
It
and
doesn't really bother me, but I'll see what your
I
point is.
I only say this because I see potential in her character
Mm.
because I like Olivia Colman quite a lot. And I like having a character like that in this series who's a bit of a I like having like a different faction that isn't just government
It's the
or Nick
wild
Fury.
card.
Yeah. And I like that she just rocks up into this guy's office and just fucking clocks him. And she's like, she's not just like, oh, I'm gonna out you as a Skrull. She's
Yeah,
just like, bang! Everyone runs in. And she's like, look at that fucking green hand. Look at that
yeah.
motherfucker. And yeah, I like that. But why I say she's like Deadpool for me is that I watched Deadpool recently, both of them.
Mm.
Uh, and the complaint I have with her comedy is the same complaint I have with some of the jokes in Deadpool. Is that I feel like some of the jokes would land better, or some of the moments would be more effective if they just cut off the last line of dialogue.
Right, right.
So, like in this, she's like, she says some, I can't remember exactly what she says, but she makes some comment or some joke, and then there's a retaliation from the guy on the floor, and then she says something else as a joke, and then she says one more line, and I'm like, if you just cut off that line, the quirkiness is an okay level of quirkiness for me, but because you said that extra line, I feel like it's too far. And I feel like a few of the jokes in Deadpool are like that as well, where it's like, well, if you just cut off some of what Ryan fucking Reynolds said, I feel like the joke lands better if you just don't say the extra line. And I feel like she's a bit quirky just for quirky's
I
sake.
get that.
And I feel like if you just had her be a bit quirky, but not off the fucking like off the handle quirky, it would
Because
work better.
they're
But
clearly doing a
I
sort
feel
of
like she's an
umbrage,
okay
right?
character. I don't have
That's
a
what
major
I'm getting
problem
from
with
it.
her. But some of the moments are just a bit like, really? Like this is what we're doing now? Like she gets in they get in the car and she's like, right, seatbelts. I like the seatbelts. And then she's like, she puts the music on and she puts the music on and he's like, oh really? We're doing this? Yeah, we're doing this. Seatbelts, please. And I'm like, I like the seatbelts, please, but I don't like the music. Is just like, what? All right,
Yeah, she gives
really
me like
strange.
she definitely gives me umbrage vibes. And that's not a bad thing either. I think she does it pretty well, honestly. Like you're right though that it does get a bit overplayed where you're like, oh right, okay, that's too far.
Yep.
You could have ended it earlier. There's a scene later on we might as well just talk about it now where she talks to the scientists, and bro, I think this is like one of my favorite scenes in the episode, just because like she's just so ruthless, She's like she's just shoots the guy, It's like
Yeah.
what? I actually quite liked it. Obviously, like I don't know, maybe I just like the sort of like innocentness in her attitude versus how ruthless she is in her actions,
I
kind of
no,
thing.
I'd agree. That's probably one of the better scenes in the episode. Yeah.
I just didn't expect it. I was like, whoa. It's like especially like a Marvel show, you don't see people get shot in the face. That's not normal.
Bit of
So
face.
that buffer took me off guard.
Fair.
Um, uh, yeah. Yeah. No, I quite
But
like that.
again, the reason I'm so critical of it is because I feel like they've almost got it, right? I feel like they're almost there. They almost like they have something that's good, but then they just go a little too far, and it's like just rein it in a little, just a little, like, and I'll
Yeah.
buy it. Like obviously she might work more for other people, and I think in terms of the reviews I've seen, she tends to be more positively viewed in America. But
Right.
I think that's probably just because it's weird to see as well, right? Because she's really good at British humor, and she's doing a very American character and a very American
Yeah.
comedy. And I think British humor is just very like to the point, and Americans do kind of. I think that's where the Deadpool thing comes. It's maybe just an American thing that the comedy
Mm.
just goes one two line too far. Um,
Yeah. I feel
obviously very general point.
like with the whole show, and this kind of ties into this specifically, is just like I think I hate comparing it to Andor because I do think it could have been that level
Yep,
of like
100%.
depth. Because I think with what Andor did so great is that they had all these they set up all these storylines. They had Andor, they had Dedra, they had what's the guy called the
Luthen.
security guy? I can't remember his name.
Oh,
Shoot, but you know what I mean. They had
yeah,
all these factions, all these people, and they focused on them a lot. And sometimes some episodes would be slow, but what you get from those episodes is just detailed story building and character work. and I just wish the show did the same. Because I don't even know if her bloody name in the show, Olivia Colman character. You could
Sophia,
delve deeper into it and
is
know,
it?
because I still don't even understand this her faction, to be honest. I know she works for the, what is it, SIS,
Well,
so she's like in
she's
cahoots with Nick Fury in a way or something.
she's also
Like,
now
I don't
involved
even
with
know.
the British government. I think.
Right?
I think
Yeah,
she's head of the British like the that section of the British government now as well, or something.
yeah. I don't know. I just feel like you could have. I feel like they could have just gotten deeper into it, like as well as you get into more Gravik and Gaia, have a little bit more between those two, because they, like, she left so quick. Like, it didn't take her much
Yep.
convincing to leave. So
I think
so
that's a
like,
general
I
point.
just feel like you could have done a lot, man,
I think that's
and they didn't.
maybe where the point comes. I was saying, like the main point, general point of this series is that I like what they're putting down, just not what I'm getting. And I think the
Yeah,
main problem with the main thing that that's getting at is saying their focus is wrong. Everything they've laid out on the table, I think, can work, but they're focusing on the wrong things at the wrong time and for the wrong duration. So, like
yeah,
for example, like you say, Amelia Clark's character should be with Gravik for a heftier time of this series,
yeah,
and I kind of like a bit more of like, oh, I liked not knowing which side she was on, and then as soon as she, well, died and then came back, but then you realize exactly whose side she's on. It kind of takes a lot of the intrigue out of this,
yeah,
and
yeah.
once you take the intrigue out of her storyline and you take any intrigue out of Ben Mendelsohn's storyline by shooting him in the fucking chest, um, there's not much intrigue left in the series, to be honest,
Yeah.
because you're not getting it from Gravik, and I don't even think you're really getting it from Nick Fury, if I'm honest. Like, I like the scenes, but again, in a season that's only 6 episodes, I get it's Marvel, but like, there's a lot of wasted scenes in this, like the car, where I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Why? Like, this is only a 35-minute episode. Like, 'cause obviously you have like the international credits and all that crap. So by the time you filter out all the crap of the episode, it's about 33 minutes, and you're spending like a minute in the car, and it's like, we don't have much time with this character. Like, just
Yeah.
give us something decent.
It's
Um,
just because because I mean, Marvel's not the best shows, but I'm going to compare it to one of my favorites, WandaVision, right? Because I think though that show, what they did best was just analyze Vision and Wanda, like their characters, and they're just not doing the same with this. I don't think, especially with the characters you don't know enough about. For example, Gaia, like I actually do like her character, and she's one of the highlights of the show now. Now that Ben's gone,
right.
but I don't know why I like her. I think it just might be Amelia Clark, if she's good. Same with Olivia Colman. Like, they're
Yeah,
both just good
because she's good.
actresses, so
Yeah,
it's just
that's
like,
it.
well, I just enjoy watching you. Same with Nick Fury as well. It's just like, do I care about the characters or do I care about the actors at this
Yeah.
point?
Again,
That's what it feels like.
I think the thing is as well is I liked, so I'm not going to skip to this. I'm just going to quickly mention it, and we'll come back to it when we're at that point
That's
in the
fine.
episode. But the monologue at the end, that should have been much earlier in the series because it lays out what Nick Fury's motivations are in the whole season, and it's like that's kind of been a point of contention for me in this whole thing. Is like, what, like, I get I get, like, obviously he has personal stakes in this, and obviously it's his problem to fuck up, but we really needed a lot more of this up front, I feel like, so you can feel those character moments throughout the season rather than feeling like what the fuck is going on, and then at the end you're like, oh yeah, like, he's this is why he's done all this, and this is why these characters aren't here, and this is why he's operating this way. And I feel like it just would have been, I'm not saying necessarily right at the beginning, but maybe like a couple of episodes sooner, because
Yeah.
it just feels really strange and really out of place to be like, oh well. I feel like that's one thing as well, is all the character motivations are a bit muddy in this, because like
Mm.
I feel like everyone's been a bit muddy, and now they're falling into like archetypes, right? Like
Yeah.
Gravik, he's been really muddy and really not great, and then he's like fallen into the tyrant archetype. And Amelia Clark was
Yeah.
kind of muddy, and you didn't know what was going on. And I liked that. Muddiness is not necessarily bad if it's done well, but like, you didn't know who she said she was on, and then she falls into the, oh, she was the double agent. Like,
Because what's Gravik's bloody goal at this point, though? Because the whole point was to be like, oh, Skrulls deserve a home, and we're gonna have the humans kill each other in World War III in order for us to take it from them. But now he's just killing his own guys, like, left and right, and they're not even being that, like, I know they attacked them later on, but
well, the thing is as well
I
is
don't know. And now he's talking about the harvest and stuff. I'm
yeah
like, where did that come
the
from, bro?
thing
I know you like built
well
this machine.
again
Uh,
muddy motivations because like you say starting the series it seems to be he wants the haven for the Skrulls. Then he wants to in this episode as soon as they turn against as soon as like two guys turn against him and then he gets attacked he's like right fuck all y'all you can just die and I'll just rule what's left basically. I'll conquer hell.
yeah,
uh, and then and then again yeah he's like oh well I'm gonna make myself a fucking Avenger Skrull like
great,
all right so you
great. Can't wait for that fight.
uh, no, mate. Well, you know what I hope if they're going the Lego character creator route with character powers, I hope they just don't give him anything from Iron Man. They just give him the little goatee beard.
Oh,
Just got a little goatee
what's gonna
beard.
happen? In the Lego games, he's literally gonna have the same powers as Stan Lee. That's what's gonna happen. He's gonna have the Stan Lee powers, where he just has a whole bunch, and it's just OP for OP's sake. That's what's gonna be, and it's gonna be so bad,
And then
man.
how do they
Like
kill him?
I'm not looking forward to it at all.
Deus Ex Machina, anyone?
Yeah, for
Um.
sure.
Anyway,
Well, they brought that up. They brought this up as well, and I just don't buy. I don't buy the
well,
argument.
I think
I
we'll
know
come
it's the
back to that
show.
because I know what you're talking about. But
Right,
we'll come
right.
back to that at that scene because I was going to
Yeah,
mention
yeah.
that as well. But that's going to be a whole big thing, I think. So
Okay.
well, I think okay. So the next scene I think is a little bit more positive. Is when you have Nick Fury and Emilia Clarke in the room talking about shit. I feel like they have. I feel like they're quite good together. Like, because
Yeah.
obviously they're not like a duo. They're not going out on adventures together. But when they're like kind of like, oh, she was like, don't, he's dead. Don't say he died a good man. He's dead, sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I like a bit of
The
that.
thing is, you got Sam Jack and Emilia Clarke in the same scene. Of course, it's gonna be good. You know what I mean? Like they're both freaking
Yeah,
class actors. So I mean, that's my thing with the show. It's just like they're all great actors, except maybe Gravik. So it's like whenever they're in the scene together, it's freaking class. Like
yeah.
they're killing it. So
I even like the kind of I guess because they kind of bring it back to refugees from World War Two, right? Um,
hmm
how a lot of the West Indies, a lot of people from the West Indies were put up in designated areas, and they're kind of that's kind of like a parrot. Like obviously they seem to be leaning in because obviously they have a few comments with like Fury and Rhodey, kind of how they appeal to each other. Is they kind of play the race card a little bit, right? They're like, oh,
yeah,
we're like yeah,
we're
and
brothers,
we're
man.
brothers, yeah.
Like,
Um,
like they always say
we
that.
know that shit. Yeah, yeah. We know the same shit. Sort of. And they kind of do it in this one as well, where they're like, oh, well, the West Indies is like it's quite a black community and that kind of thing. So they're kind of playing into like Nick Fury's motivation for housing the Skrulls there is based in the history of the place, and it's more of a
hmm
like a reprisal of what's come before, sort of thing, but just with Skrulls instead of um, West Indies people from the West Indies. I like that. I don't mind that. I don't feel like it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's you'll get your critical drinker, which lives not too far from where we are, by the way. Um, you'll get him. I'm assuming you'll get him and people like him who are very purposefully radical, radical on the platform. Who'll be like, "Oh, look at all this black allegory stuff. I hate it." And look at this woke crap. And it's like, I, I, like fair enough. That is present in Hollywood at the moment. A lot of that, just like appealing to stuff when it's unnecessary. I feel like it works in this series, to be honest. I don't feel like I'm being forced down my throat. I feel like it works and it kind of plays into more character stuff rather than just
Yeah,
for the sake of it.
it relates to
Yeah,
what's happening
I
as well.
honestly don't
So
have a problem with it in this series, so I'm okay
yeah,
with that. I'm not gonna fall into that of like, oh, they're bringing up black people, it must be woke. Like, fair.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I did think that was really funny that scene though when the police sirens come on and he's like, "Oh fuck, better go."
yeah. Gotta go.
Yeah. And it's like, how would they know you're there for one, and like, how do you know they're coming for you? Like, it's so funny. I just thought it was really funny. He just dips out, and then we get the scene obviously with Olivia Colman that you said. I like that scene as well. The kind of ginger
Yeah.
woman and her husband. I like that kind of like background as well, where you're like, again, this is a kind of factional thing. I like things being kind of outsourced to other characters, right? Where it's like it's not like
Mhm.
it's not like Gravik built this machine in a cave by himself. Like
Yeah.
It's like he had to go to someone who was really smart, and he went, "Please build this super scroll machine for me," and they went, "Okay." And there was like, there's like information being passed from people to people, and they're all undercover, and it kind of
Yeah.
it builds that world quite well, where you're like, "Oh, this stretches out a lot farther than just the little haven they have," and I like
It's like
that.
if you're gonna do it, like give us more time with these people then, because like yeah, it's an interesting death, but it's like I don't care though.
Or give
You
us
know, it's
more
just
examples of this kind of thing earlier in the season, because again, you're
mhm.
the only people you have are in the Haven and in the government. You don't have the kind of secret Skrulls just living on a farm doing undercover work for Skrulls, just trying to get by.
Well, these were the two that made the machine though, right?
Yeah, but they're not tied to like they're not.
Oh
You
right.
know what I mean? They're not in like a government lab. They're in they're in
Yeah.
like a they're in the middle of nowhere doing it, right? I like stuff like that a bit
Right.
more. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like I wish we'd had a bit more of that earlier on, just to flesh out the world a little bit and how the Skrulls have kind of spread themselves out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I like that scene. I like the world building, so I don't have many complaints
That
about
was
that.
good.
And I do like a bit. I like it when the MCU has teeth. Like you say, like shoot a motherfucker in the head from time to time. Like
Yeah.
I like when they actually like commit to something, which isn't definitely not all the time.
Yeah. The show has been darker than compared to other um, movies and shows. To be fair, it has been as it should though, because it is again, kids aren't watching this, man. I like maybe, but like I doubt they're like enjoying it as much
Mate,
as
I'm barely
they
enjoying
would
it.
for
Kids aren't
other
gonna enjoy
shows.
fuck.
Because it's just too.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine. I can't like if I was a kid, this wouldn't be my favorite show like at all. This would be something I would like later down the line where I can understand it a little bit more. Because as a kid, I would not be processing this at all, man.
I do think
Not at all.
there is a bit of, and I think this probably comes into what we were talking about earlier with the characters. I do think there's maybe a bit of poking and prodding going on here, where it's like, well, we want the show to be this, and it needs to fit in the MCU mold. Where it's like, but maybe like what it needs is not to do that. Like,
Yeah.
please.
Well, what I liked about MCU before is that every movie was a different genre, and nowadays it just feels like it's the same mesh.
Everything's the same
You know what I
flavor,
mean?
yeah.
It's just the same feel in all the films and shows. Like I missed when it was like, oh, you got Winter Soldier, it's a bloody spy thriller, and you got Ant Man, a heist film. It's just so it's like, well, okay, love it. it's,
Yeah.
it's sweet. I missed that. And then you go to Doctor Strange, you got like the magical, whimsical kind of movie. But nowadays it's just the same sort of tone, the same sort of story. It's just like
I mean,
it's boring.
this plays
Again, though,
into,
I do like the show. Like
yeah.
we're dumping on it, but it's like it's just the level of Marvel shows that we have at this point, where it's like this is still, in my opinion, probably one of their better ones. But that says a lot because it's pretty mid.
I think the
you
first half,
so
you could make a strong argument for this being in the top three maybe, or top four from the
depending
first
on
few
how it ends,
episodes.
it's probably top three. Yeah.
But honestly, the last two
But I know
episodes,
everyone's got different opinions though with
yeah,
the shows. I feel like some people like other stuff, whereas they might dislike
the last two
others.
episodes have knocked it down. The only reason it might not be knocked down the tier list is because the other Marvel shows have been kind of ass as well. So it might,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, to be fair, the last shows we had before this was She-Hulk and bloody Miss Marvel, so maybe just by comparison, it's good. so
what about where would you place this in terms of Moon Knight?
see, I really liked Moon Knight. It was only the last episode where I still liked the ending though, in my opinion, but I know a lot of people didn't. Moon Knight's probably my favorite, and then WandaVision,
I
then maybe
Yeah,
this. But
I'd
I don't know, I
say
like aspects of all of them.
I'd say Moon Knight's probably my favorite, but I have some major issues with it. Not just the ending, but also the character and just some
Yeah,
moments. Like I really didn't. Obviously, this is not. I don't. I'm not gonna get into it. It's not Moon Knight review. Anyway,
yeah,
and then probably WandaVision or Loki or something like that as well. But I think probably WandaVision was more consistently good until the end.
till the end. Yeah,
But yeah, I think Moon Knight is probably at least the most interesting, right? Like,
yeah.
but
My the best thing I did with the show personally is not watch breakdown videos and stuff this time round. I've not been doing that for this one
right,
because when I did that for the other shows, it would give me it was like hype me up. Oh, it's like, oh my god, this is gonna happen, and it
Mephisto's
doesn't.
in
And you're like, oh,
WandaVision. Yeah,
yeah, it just hypes you up, and it's just like, oh well, that's pretty crap in comparison. Like Moon Knight, because I didn't know anything about Moon Knight, and then they're talking about this third persona in the breakdown videos, and I'm like, that's just spoiled it for me then, because I just wasn't expecting that until
right.
they told me. and then I'm starting to see the signs in this show, and I was like, oh well, I already kind of expected that. Whereas in this
Yeah.
show, I'm not getting that at all. So I don't
Well,
know
I
what's going on,
also
man.
honestly don't
You
think
know?
they're putting out as much mystery as the show goes on. Because one of the things that would happen with Moon Knight, right, is that you had these ongoing mysteries that would last like between 3 or 4 episodes,
Mm,
if not the whole season. Whereas this one seems to kind of resolve issues. This is what I said by kind of treading water a bit. Is it sets up an issue and then solves it the next episode, if not the episode after.
yeah,
And it's
and
like,
it starts a
all
new
right,
one.
yeah, and then just starts a new one, and I'm like, I would have
Yeah,
rather you just kept some of these threads going for longer and just delved into
yeah.
them better than just like set up new shit. So whether that's been like it's been like an 8 episode series and they've cut it down, I don't know, but God knows.
Hmm.
Uh, but then we get, I guess, the next scene I remember. I jump in if I've missed anything, but I think it's Talos' funeral.
Yeah, we have a little bit of that.
He gets,
Nothing, honestly, not nothing special to
yeah,
me.
he gets
It was
Darth
just
Vadered.
a little
Yeah,
goodbye or whatever.
and there's no,
It was fine.
yeah, I do find it kind of weird that they just killed his wife off screen as well, because they never they never really play into that too much, apart from the very start when Gaia, that's how she's kind of, when they're in the tunnel and he's like, "Oh, your mum died," and she's like, "Oh," and
Yeah.
then they kind of don't bring it up again, and then the next episode they're like, "Here's the wedding ring," and it's like, I feel like if this is a general point as well, is people just don't seem to like mourn for shit. I don't. This is not an MCU problem. I think this is probably just a modern cinema problem in general. People just don't
Yeah.
mourn, and I get like, there's examples from before as well. It's not like this was a thing perfect before, like Star Wars. Like he moans about Obi-Wan for like 3 seconds, then he's like, "Oh shit, we got to shoot stuff," but like it's a bit like that in
Great
this.
kid, don't get cocky. Like
Yeah, yeah.
right
It's a
after.
bit like that in this, where it's like Talos is dead. You don't really get too much from Fury of like, oh well, he's total broken and his part he's completely let down the guy that he's had like a 30, 40 year relationship with. Maria Hill's the
Yeah.
exact same. Even Gaia, like obviously you get. To be honest, I think Gaia's probably done okay. I can't.
It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
It's fine.
Um, Priscilla, I don't really like Priscilla all that much. Like, I don't know. She doesn't.
Yeah.
She's okay, and I think again it's just a thing of like you've brought in this double agent thing, and you've brought in like okay, so this is another point with Gravik as well. Actually, is what the fuck is his plan with Priscilla? Because
Oh, God knows, man.
she's obviously been like a sleeper agent for Nick Fury in case he comes back for like years, right?
Mm.
But we find out that Gravik was working with Fury to get the Avenger DNA, which was after Infinity War. So
Yeah.
how long has he been doing this behind Fury's back as well? Like I'll come back to that later because that's a whole timeline thing that I'm a bit confused on. But with Priscilla specifically, it's like he gives her an order to go kill Fury, knowing that she won't do it. But then if he knew she wasn't going to betray Fury, why would he ever have her as a sleeper agent for all these years? Why would he just waste that time? And why would he waste our time? It feels like it's for us, right? This whole thing of like
Yeah.
she's on his side feels like it's for me because he's like, "Oh, well, I knew she would never betray him." So it's like, so why the fuck did you ever have her on your side then? Like, what was the
He's a
point?
crap leader, bro. That's what I
Yeah.
mean.
It,
They keep telling us he's a leader, but he's never proven to be one. It's just he's just making stupid decisions constantly. It
it's
doesn't make any
it's
sense,
so
man.
bad.
Doesn't make any sense.
That's the one thing where I was like, that's actually quite bad. Where I'm like, that feels like Priscilla. The only reason you brought up Priscilla at all, being on his side, is just to have a hook for that episode to be like, go kill Fury, and then the next episode she's like, nah, I'm not gonna kill him. Of course I'm not. He's my husband.
Yeah.
And then Gravik's like, of course she wasn't gonna kill him, and I'm like, so everyone knew this wasn't gonna happen then. Like,
Yeah.
all right, fine, fuck me then. Like,
So then they send people over to the house to kill him and her, but freaking Gaia gets there first for somehow.
and they don't kill them. Yeah, it's like, oh mate,
And
just
they won't
you
kill
know
them.
what? I'll bend over
It
right
was
now.
it was
You
a
just get
fine
comfortable.
action sequence. It was nothing special.
Honestly,
It
I thought it.
was just
I thought it was actually filmed quite badly.
what with the like quick cuts and stuff.
Yeah, but also like where characters are in relation to the last cut and like things like that. Like
Right.
the guy that came through the ceiling, it's like he comes through the ceiling and then like Priscilla's on her ass, or like I can't even remember which one hit the floor, but like it doesn't gel properly, and I was like, well, that was a weird cut. And then it happens a few more times, and I don't know. I think I didn't recognize the name of the director for this episode,
Hmm.
from like the previous episodes or any other Marvel shows, but. Yeah, I'd say that the directing was pretty well, or the editing anyway. The editing was quite poor there. Um,
Yeah, no, I agree.
it was also just very bog standard. Again, this is a big complaint for me. Is like when you have shapeshifters, like it's not. You can obviously set up like narrative things with the shapeshifters, which is what they're concentrating on. But I feel like they're not taking advantage of the power set of these scrolls at all. Because, like, what I want to see is, like, oh, Priscilla, like, takes out a motherfucker and then turns into that motherfucker. And then you see, like, a guy shoot a guy from behind that's on the same side. And then you're like, what the fuck is he doing? And then she turns back into Priscilla and you're like, oh, cool. Like, she disguised herself mid battle.
Yeah.
Like, how, like, like, just put something like that in, it's cool. It gives it a bit of flair, a bit of style. But this is, like, not only is this, like, every other action sequence in an MCU film that's just not superheroes, it's just like
Yeah.
any other action sequence in any other property. And it's like when you have shapeshifters at your like disposal, why are you giving me very bog standard action scenes? It's very weird. I just feel it feels very lazy at times. Um, and I feel like it's a shame as well because I feel like Emilia Clarke and like you can see I feel like they're putting their effort in, right? Like the action
They're
scene,
definitely
yeah.
going to keep her around to be a thing going forward. I feel like
Well, I hope so. Like what I
it's Emilia Clarke, man. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Prince Money. It's
But
big fan base. You're not just going to kill her off. That's surprised in episode 3 when they killed her. I was like, what? No way. And then they
yeah,
obviously bring her back away afterwards.
exactly.
I feel like, yeah, she's going to be like the new Talos, I think, just to represent the
But
scrolls.
then they also bring back the whole thing of this was something that I was a bit annoyed at as well. Is they bring back the facial, like the Nick Fury disguises himself,
Yeah.
and I'm like, so the shapeshifters actually don't have much of like much of a one up on humans now then, because they can just disguise
Yeah.
themselves on their own. It's like
Yeah.
what a weird concept to bring. I know this was in Winter Soldier, and I know it was in Black Widow,
Black Widow. Yeah.
but to make to make the focal point of your show is that people aren't who they seem, and that's because they're aliens. And then to go, oh, but people aren't who they seem because humans also have the same technology. It's like,
Yeah.
why bother? Like, it's very strange. And
Yeah.
but also it brings into question why the fuck is Nick Fury not being going out? Because everyone, literally the whole point of them being in Russia, everyone was like, Nick Fury, you're a 6 foot black man. Everyone's gonna know who you are. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, why didn't he just put one of these fucking masks on then?
They even make it worse as well in that same scene because she's saying like, "Oh, you don't have one that like covers your whole body," and it's just your face, and he's like, "Well, we do. I just have one."
Yeah.
It's like also like you're just a scroll then, mate. Like you can literally
Basically,
just
yeah.
turn into
But
whoever you
also,
want.
but earlier on, so like when he's with Maria Hill in Russia, right?
Yeah,
And like they're trying to, it's like they know Talos is looking for them, and they know that if they are seen by anyone on Talos' side, that that's going to blow the mission of trying to stop the bombs, right?
yeah,
So why the fuck are they not wearing these disguises? It's really bad. Like it's really dumb. And the thing is, like you could have this point be valid, even if these face masks weren't in the show, because you could be like, oh well, in the continuity these exist, and you could go, yeah, well they're not in the show, so at least it's not a big point. But then they make it a point in this episode that people can change their face, even though we've seen an example of when that would be preferable, and they haven't done it. And it's like, if this was never in the show, what difference would it make? It's really strange. Like, I feel like they just want to give characters cool moments without actually thinking about how how that relates to everything else we've seen so far.
mm. They could have just not used that, and I would have totally forgotten that they have that technology. You know, like
Well, that's what I mean,
I would
100%.
have
Yeah,
remembered.
it's and then well, and then you get your little car moment, which is fine.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not my
fine.
favorite, but it's fine.
Again, two good actors
I
in the
do
same scene. It's you're fine.
the bit
You
when
know.
they go in, the bit when they first go into the car. I'm a bit like that's a bit cringe. But when they're in the
Mm.
woods driving to like in Finland and they're driving to the grave, I like their back
Yeah,
and forth there.
I
Um,
like that. Yeah,
the
it's
only
good.
thing I'm like the other thing is, and he's like, oh, I give all this stuff to Rhodey, and he's like, you did what? Like she's a Skrull, and she's like, what? And it's like,
Yeah,
I get we know that, and she doesn't, but also I feel like that was just written purely to give Fury a one up on her from the very beginning of the series. Is that he's like, oh, I can recognize Skrulls, and she can't.
yeah.
And that's fair enough. But I feel like the whole moment was just written to display that, rather than just it was being like an organic thing that was brought up. It just
I feel like a lot of the scene was to just tell her stuff as well that the audience already knows. Because it's a surprise to her that he's married a Skrull and stuff, and it's maybe a big deal, but it's like we already know that. It just feels like a random. Again, it's good. It's a good scene. There's good dialogue between them and stuff, and
imagine
chemistry and stuff. But it just feels it just feels pointless to the viewer because like
imagine if
we
you
already know this information.
imagine if you didn't know Priscilla was a Skrull, and this is how we found out. Is that
Yeah,
he let slip. That I feel like that might have been. I
yeah.
I mean the alternative is
Or
you could say
or just not have her in the show because you don't need her. She's added nothing except like really nothing because she's supposed to be the undercover spy for Gravik, but then she's obviously not because she wouldn't kill Fury. So it's like she didn't need to be in it.
on the first mission she's given from our point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like if this was the first mention you hear that even has a wife, and it's like oh she's a Skrull, that'd have been cool. Nice little line there. There was another line though that I almost brought up earlier, is that she's and this puts me off a lot of the shows and sometimes the movies as well because they're in this universe, so everything needs to tie in, and then but they just choose not to. She
Yeah.
says, "Why don't you just call your friends Fury?" referring to the Avengers, and he's like, "This is my
My problem
business."
to
And it's like,
fix.
bro,
If you fuck this
like
up though,
come on,
like
man, like that makes no sense.
it really bugged me as well because I was like because the thing is the thing that bugged me wasn't the fact they did it. It was the fact that the music swells and they give it a nice moment and they're like, oh, this is Fury being an honorable man, and I'm like, no, this is Fury being a dumbass. Like this is Fury
Yeah.
being so pride. To me, what they were trying to put forward is that he's trying to fix his own mess and that's an honorable thing to do. But all I could think about was like the pragmatist in my head is just like, but if he fucks this up, the world's gone. And that's
World War
completely
Three
against
is
his
at
whole
stake
point.
here.
But that's completely against his
You
whole
know?
character. Like his whole thing is like, oh, victory at any cost, sort of thing, right? Like there's
They've
like,
just got back from the blimp and they're risking World War Three on Nick Fury taking on Super
yeah.
Skrulls.
And it's
You
like,
know, it's like, come
really?
on,
Like
bro,
you
just
get like the thing
freaking
is,
call
it's probably
Vulcan
bad
or
timing to
something.
complain, right? Because the writers on strike and that kind of thing, right? But you couldn't come up with
Yeah,
a better fucking reason why the Avengers can't do this. Like, I guess earlier on
yeah.
they were like, oh, in case they get DNA, but it's like if he has all the harvest stuff and also the harvest as well, that just
Mm.
seems like such a dumb
Well, yeah,
idea.
that I liked the reason before because they were like, if we involve the Avengers, then they can then copy the
Yep,
Avengers
I
and then
I
end up making things tricky for us.
I agree.
But now it seems very finalized now, where it's like even if they're there, it's not going to change anything except you have an upper hand. So
Yeah,
yeah, no, it's rough. But yeah, the harvest, I don't like that either because I just know it's going to set up the Super Scroll, which I've heard of, and I just know it's going to be this CGI mess. So
I just keep coming
I'm not
back
looking
to
forward to it.
Johnny Storm from like the 2006 fucking Fantastic Four. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
I don't want to see all my favorite characters' powers used by like one guy.
Hmm.
It's like
They couldn't do it well with Taskmaster, and that's Taskmaster's literal purpose. So, and they couldn't do it well there. So I
yeah,
think they're going to
it's
do it.
just not a good. It's just a lazy concept as well. Like the whole point in us liking these characters is one for their characters, but also their powers because they're unique, at
Yeah,
least in somewhat. Like characters have
yeah.
like a unique power set, and it's like, well, as soon as you break the lines between unique power set and anyone has access to this with their magic doohickey called the Harvest, it's
Hmm.
like, all right,
I love how Fury he said like, oh, they've got all the DNA of the Avengers, even Carl Danvers. And it's like, of course you have to name drop her.
even Carol Danvers,
It's like,
just in case you
because you need
forgot.
to ensure she's the most OP. like,
Well,
like,
but
it's like,
also,
come on, man.
well,
Like, imagine Hulk. Imagine if they said, oh, they've got Hulk's DNA. Oh my god, that'd be way more intimidating. I think.
but
Like, what?
again, we've seen that Hulk, like, because from She-Hulk, right? All you need is a bit of Banner's blood, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But like,
yeah.
I guess, but um,
Anyway,
the other thing is hadn't thought of this before, but now that Fury has the Harvest, do you think he's gonna and he has Skrulls on his team? Do you think he's gonna give it to like Amelia Clark or Priscilla instead of Gravik?
I feel like. Mm,
Because if he gives it to Gravik, then Gravik has all these powers. But if he gives it to one of them first, then they have the same power set, and that seems like a really Marvel thing to do.
yeah, it is. I can totally see that happening because if graphics definitely getting something because they need the big boss fight at the end, right? So he's gonna get his powers, but the only way to beat him is if another Skrull has the same powers, so probably Amelia Clark, right?
but
Because we already know she's already got powers because she lived
extremists,
in the
yeah,
machine, right? So
mate.
I don't know the extent of her
What
powers, but she's got something.
what Garevik needs is a fucking bullet in the head in episode one and a better villain. That's what we need. But
Yeah.
yeah, that little monologue, it felt really strange because again, it feels like they're putting something down that I'm just like, no, you didn't earn that.
Yeah.
Like you didn't earn this moment. Like some of it, I felt did feel a little earned. Like I thought the monologue was good in general, but in the context of the rest of the show, again, this whole premise of like this is my battle to fight should have like I get they were playing with that idea, but this monologue should have been way earlier on. Someone should have asked this question to Fury way earlier on in the series. Why are you doing this? Why are you here? Why have you been gone? And why are you now back? And he's like, "Oh, this is personal." And it's like, "All right, so your motivation is the same as fucking Jaws the shark." Like, all right, very nuanced, very well done. Like, fuck's sake, like it's
I did laugh because I don't know what episode it was, but you said like, "Oh, we just need Nick Fury to get his eye patch on and get his guns out. It would be good." Now he's done it. He's got the eye patch
again.
back.
Just do that in episode two. Like, what if we not? What if we had in between then? Like, because even had Talos's death. Like, obviously that's the motivating factor that's made Fury go from he's not Nick Fury anymore and he's broken to like, oh, he needs to be Nick Fury again.
Yeah,
But do that like 4 episodes ago. Like, show us a broken man for a couple episodes, and then we can see Fury for the season. But again, it's like we've spent 5 episodes now just to get the Nick Fury at the last minute of the 5th episode. If next episode is like 30 minutes again, 40 minutes, like we've only seen Nick Fury for like a sixth of this show at best. Like it's I
I
did
can't imagine it being a long episode because I can't see them having a lot of content to push out next episode. It feels like it should be relatively a quick fix, So
yeah. I mean,
because again, there should be all these factions and stuff, but there isn't. It's literally Gravik versus Fury right now. No one else really matters except maybe Gaia,
yeah.
So like, is Rhodey going to play into something? Like, I don't know. Like, he's not been doing anything like physical in the show so far. It's all been mental. So
But also we have the like because people like are aware now that Skrulls exist, right? Like the
I
general
think
public.
so.
It's like common knowledge now that there are shapeshifting aliens among humans.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, like I feel like that's such a big concept to like wrap up in one episode, so I just don't feel like it is going to be. But also, it feels wrong to like just because this just feels like setup at this point because it's just treading water just so at the very last episode they can go, oh well, they're aware of Skrulls now and people don't trust anyone anymore, and it's like, but that's what I want to see in this show, not the next one. Like,
Yeah.
all right, it just really feels like this is Act One. This is like Act 0.5 of the Skrull invasion. Like,
But they've also done it really quickly because like I remember previous conversations in other episodes where like they infiltrate the government way too quickly, and now World War III is about to happen right now. It's like that's so fast. They should have had this should have happened ages ago from now. Like at the end of the season or the season two or something like that. And I kind of agree now because it all just feels quick, and it's like, oh, like none of this was built up. It just happened, you know. I like some of the surprises, like, oh, the UK government's literally ran by a scroll, like stuff like that. But to to I don't know, like to pull the trigger that quickly, it just feels a lot. And then you get to this point, and the invasion doesn't even feel like the important part anymore. It's this harvest thing. So
yeah,
yeah,
I did like the little breathalyzer lock that he had on his gravestone where it's like, and then it just opens. I did like that, but I don't know, like I it feels the harvest again. Like I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about the harvest, but it just
it's just a crap pot
it
device,
just
man.
feels
Like
lazy.
it's you didn't need it. You don't need the freaking. Again, I don't know. Again, we've not read the comics. We don't even know if the harvest exists in the comics. I don't care. I don't care if it's a big deal. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of it.
Yeah,
Um,
just because something's in the comics, this might not be, but just because something's in the comics doesn't mean it's a good idea to bring it into the show.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
because a lot of the times in MCU, obviously, they do take remnants from the comics, but they change it up or whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah. I'm always fine with them using stuff, obviously, but use it in the context of your own world as well. Like, don't change your world to then fit what in the comics. That's why I'm kind of bummed with Rhodey a little bit because it just feels like they did it for the sake of it. Like because what I love about Marvel is that everything was planned from day one essentially. Like they planned it early. I doubt they knew Rudy was a freaking Skrull. No way they knew that. Like, I really doubt it. Like this was planned like since Civil War. Doubt, doubt me. I,
Oh, since Civil, no, no chance, no chance.
you know what I mean? So
But
yeah,
the other thing is, so I mentioned earlier the timeline, and they reveal in the car that Nick Fury had hired Gravik to go in with a team of collectors to go collect the DNA for the harvest, right?
yep,
So that means Gravik is on Nick Fury's side very recently in the timeline, and this is all, as you say, like this has all happened in the space of like a couple of months or something. Like, because obviously there's been set up where, I mean, we don't know exactly when, but in my mind, there's been set up on Gravik's part that he's been setting up this colony, he's been setting up all these agents in the governments around the world for a very long time. But like, why is I don't know why he's doing jobs for Fury then. Like he's like, oh, I fucking hate Fury and he's let us down, but I'm gonna do this job for him, and then 3 weeks later I'm gonna kill him. Like what?
yeah,
Because when are we set then? When are we? Because they talk about the blip as if it was like years and years ago, and they don't address it
yeah,
at all. But they're like, oh well, Gravik was on his side during the when the blip came back. So like the recovery
yeah,
effort from the Battle of Earth, which I like the title Battle of Earth, but
yeah. I do too. I think that's a Marvel issue as well, where it's just like, where's this set? You know, like I feel like in every new thing we get, we're like, wait a minute, what part is this in? Which I think is a complete difference with Star Wars. I think Star Wars does this very well, where it's very clear, at least if you're a fan, where it's set. Like so, Kenobi show, okay, this is where it's set.
yep.
Ahsoka season one, this is where it's set. Like it's all we all know, like what movies they're in between or whatever.
Which is
Whereas this, with Marvel, it's really
which is
complicated.
fucking
It's just like,
ironic, right? Because like we have a calendar system in the real world for Marvel,
yeah,
and there is a
yeah.
made-up calendar system in Star Wars that is more of a
Yeah,
fan thing than a real thing.
that we jump around
Yeah.
constantly, like back and forward. You know.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's mad.
but yeah,
It's mad.
this is. I mean, obviously, again we've slated it. I don't know if you want to say some positive stuff because I feel like we've been slating this a lot, but
I don't know. Like honestly, after like talking about it, I've kind of like changed my mind. I feel like I've realized like there's a lot more negative stuff. Um, I still the thing is I still enjoyed the episode. I actually did, but there were some negative stuff we had to bring up.
address. Yeah.
To be fair, I think we turned around on Olivia Colman's character because before we were definitely like on the fence. We are just like, okay, like, what's this character all about? She's just too quirky. Whereas I feel like this episode kind of redeemed her a bit. Um, I don't know how much she's gonna play in the next episode, but
I'd hope
yeah,
that because they're bringing her in and they're doing the exposition dump in the car, I'm hoping she's gonna play like at least a decent part, right?
I don't know,
But
don't know.
again, I like so what the thing is, I already feel like I know where episode 6 going, but what are your hopes for episode 6 then?
Hopes, oh God, I don't know. I feel like my hopes are in the bin because I'm just fully expecting. I'm just fully expecting a CGI freaking mess of a fight between Gaia and Gravik. I think what's gonna happen is Gravik's gonna kick Fury's ass. He's gonna wipe them out. Maybe hit what's her name, Priscilla. Maybe she'll die or something. I feel like someone's gonna die. Only one of the minor characters though. I don't think Rudy's gonna play a big part. Um, I don't know because they've still got the whole World War III thing going on because the president's just going to make the decision, right? But I suppose they're going to call it off if he gets the powers. But I don't see why Gravik could just take the powers and then also do World War III. I don't see why he couldn't do that. He's got all the leverage here. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like I'm just prepared to. I'm ready to watch, and then I'll judge it after, and then that's it. It's over. Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, again, I don't know. I don't know the secret invasion thing in the comics. I don't know what they do there and what big deal happens. So I don't even know based on what they've done there to judge it off. So I'm purely just going in with blind expectations. Probably low because with the other shows, it is just a big CGI fight at the end, like Moon Knight, WandaVision, even I think even Falcon Winter Soldier even did the same. Like it's the same format.
Do you not feel like Gravik basically fell into the same character as the bad guys in Falcon and Winter Soldier in this episode?
A bit. I kind of got that from early on though. Um, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that I do like. Not that I don't like's a strong word. I prefer him over that story arc in that show. I could not
To be
give
fair,
less of
she was a
a
bad villain as
toss.
well.
Yeah, she wasn't good, man. Especially when you had the difference is that Gravik's the main individual villain of this show, whereas in that you had US Agent as well, who was easily 10 times better than her. The US Agent was actually an interesting character to look into. Like, oh, what if you get the anti-Captain America who doesn't deserve the powers and stuff? Like that's an interesting
Yeah.
concept, not the lassie, but yeah, I don't know. What about you? What are you thinking?
I would thing is I'm kind of torn, right? Because in my mind, the shows should not have. They should be self-contained stories. They should be like a little mini comic run, right? Where it's like a self-contained run that everything that's happened, and if you're a fan, you can read into other events in the series into that show or vice versa. But there shouldn't be massive events depending on the shows. Because I know for a fact my dad didn't watch WandaVision, and he struggled with Multiverse of Madness, and I know that was a pretty big complaint. The problem
Yeah.
is I don't know if that information filtered through into this way before they filmed this, so this might have the same problem because I feel like unless there's some like because I'm torn because I don't want out of principle I don't want there to be massive consequences that have ramifications for everything else that mean you have to watch you have to watch this as set up for something else. I don't want that. Even though I'm gonna watch it all, I don't I don't mind it, but I know other people don't, and that bothers me a bit as well because it's like, well, it's a weird principle to try and get around that you have to watch everything to understand something. Doesn't I don't like that. But on the flip side, I feel like the only way the show can impress me now is if the ramifications do echo into something else, where they're like, oh, like World War Three did start, or like, you know,
Yeah.
like, or like, oh, the Skrulls have like a kind of new Asgard home style home on Earth now, and that's like a big thing. But like,
Hmm.
unless there's some big consequence to this, by big consequence I don't mean like just like random CGI fight like you say, but like some sort of like political or like social change, I guess. Like if there's some like big ripple throughout the MCU, that's what I want. I want there to be like, holy shit, there's aliens living among us, and I want to see that. But I wish that was episode one, and that like, we were dealing with the consequences of that in the show, rather than setting that up. Um, so I'm really torn. I'm like, I want it to be a self-contained story that I can just watch episode 1 to 6 and not have to watch anything else, or watch something else and not have to watch this. But
Yeah.
I, I,
It's
I
it's
want it to
tough
have.
because like just Secret Invasion just on its principle should affect absolutely everything, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
like WandaVision, that's a self-contained story you could easily do, which they did. It just tied into a film like directly, which made it complicated. Whereas like this show should affect everything, you know. So
I feel like this came at the
I
wrong
don't
time
know.
as well because you've disbanded the Guardians now,
Yeah.
so they're like
Hmm.
out the like. So if any of them are Skrulls, it's like, well, that's dumb. So you can't use any of them. The Avengers have split up again, and like most of them are dead. So it's like there's not many
Yeah.
characters I care about actually being Skrulls in the first place
Yeah. Which
anymore.
honestly might be a good thing because I don't want them to just be like, "Oh, Tony Stark's a Skrull," you know, like nah, nah, put me off. Freaking Rudy's put me off it, and he's like such a like a C tier character, and that's annoyed me. So I'm like, but I think it's just because I don't know. So I assume Martin Freeman was a Skrull then, because I feel like we've completely forgotten about
That's a
that.
good point. That is a good point.
Like because they've not talked about it since. So I'm
Where the
assuming
fuck
yeah,
is
like he
Martin?
was a Skrull since day
But
one.
also, again, we have this like mystery man from episode one behind the glass. Like, is that
Yeah, I swear that was a thing. I'm gonna look at this
is
up.
that just
I
Rhodey
swear.
then, or like or who is that? Are we gonna get that in the next episode, or is that gonna be something in the future? Like, fuck's sake, man. There's just a lot of
Because like
threads. There's a
I'm starting to think that was a freaking like that's just like a thing I made up in my mind. But like, no, I swear that was
It's
a
just
hint.
it
So
feels very, very like inconsistent with the threads they want to deal with and the threads they don't want to deal with. And
yeah,
that comes from like Olivia Colman just not being in one episode. And it's like, well, if she has something to do with the finale, which seems like what they're setting up from this episode, then why the fuck is she not being in every episode? It seems really strange to have these like threads and then just like cut one off and then cut one off and then just like you say, like Martin Freeman, like it's the opening to the episode, right? The opening to the series, Martin Freeman, and they haven't dealt with it at all. It's like
yeah,
I feel like there's consequences happening, but no one's reacting to what they are as well. It's really strange.
yeah,
But again, I think this is like a very okay show. Like,
yeah. It's passable. It's just we're gonna look into it because we're fans of the MCU. So it's just like we want it to be good, and we're gonna judge it hard if they're disappointing us, just as we would with Star Wars. Um, so it's just, and
and
again, we're not even fans of the comics,
the thing
so we're
is,
purely judging it based on our love for the MCU movie franchise.
yeah,
You know,
the thing is as well. I've heard like because obviously the big criticism right now is that oh the MCU isn't it's not as good as it used to be, and then you've got this whole counter argument of like oh it was never that good, you were just younger or whatever. But like if this had been what the MCU was when it originated, I don't think we'd have the MCU, right?
100%.
Like that's my
Nah,
biggest
like
counter
I
argument to
call
that.
I call bollocks
Like
people that are being, oh no, it's just because you're a Czech kid back then. But
no,
we talked about this with Indiana Jones in a review as well, where it's like, no,
it's shit.
these films are good now.
Yeah.
you know,
Like
it's not nostalgia. You know.
yeah, and like obviously there is nostalgia there whether you like it or not, but that's not
Well,
the driving
yeah, of
factor. That's
course.
not the driving factor. And I
But
think
it's like I have nostalgia for the freaking Transformers: The Fallen, but I'm not gonna say it's a good film. You know,
fair,
like,
yeah.
like we're good enough like sort of critics to like cast aside their nostalgia. Like I'm doing a Pixar rewatch and I criticized Monsters Inc. and I love that film, but it's like it wasn't as good as I remember it being as a kid. But it's still amazing, but it's not the same level as I had in my memory. You know, like I think we're good to do that, but yeah, it's not the same. And I think you make a good point. If this was made back then, I don't think we'd have the Marvel
Yeah.
we would have now.
If this came out in phase 1, no one would remember it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
It'd be
the
the
fact it's in phase
fourth,
5,
it'd be four Dark World of,
yeah,
of Phase One.
mate. And if this is in phase 5 by phase 6, nobody's going to remember it again. Unless something
Yeah,
really
like
cool happens in episode 6 that's actually like really like intelligent or like kind of groundbreaking for the MCU. Honestly, I can't see anyone remembering the show either, which is a shame because I was actually pretty hyped for the show going in as
it's a
well.
shame. Yeah.
But I mean, the Marvels comes out in November, so I guess even if this is left open ended, we're not waiting like years for the conclusion. But
Well, we've got Loki this year as well, right? I think Loki season 2. I'm certain we do.
but
We'll look it up.
October,
Right.
yeah.
I
So
think that's our next thing.
well, it's strange, right? Again, because I think I'm more on board, like you say, like the multiverse stuff hasn't been great so far, but I'm definitely more on board with. I think I'm more on board with the multiverse stuff, but I would rather like the Skrull stuff than the multiverse stuff, to be honest. I think the
The
Skrull stuff,
scroll, yeah, the scrolls has a lot of potential. Whereas multiverse is always going to be messy. Like that was always going to be a bit of a mess.
well, I don't
Um,
know, like I feel like the multiverse stuff is always gonna just be like, oh look who we brought back.
yeah, yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
gonna be like, oh look, Chris Evans is back. Like that's happening, right? Like 100% in Kang Dynasty. Like
yeah.
they're coming back, right?
Johnny Storm.
Oh mate, I don't. Oh, I fucking hope so, yeah. But like,
That'd be
you
amazing.
know what I mean? Like they're bringing and like Hugh Jackman's in Deadpool 3. It's like that's what they're doing with the multiverse. The multiverse is, oh look at what we brought back. Whoa, look at this.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Like after the three phases of Marvel, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to just have their fun. Obviously, they should make it good.
Yep.
but
But I think
but that's a whole other thing.
Secret Invasion, I think, should be not parallel with that storyline. I think that's a big problem. Even at the outset, never mind where it ends up, because you've got these two parallel lines going forward now of like we have shapeshifting aliens who are invading Earth, but we also have all this multiverse crap, and it's like you need to do these one at a time. You need to
That's
do
why
these
I
one at
would
a
have
time.
done it during the blip. It just separates it completely from
Or
other
after.
stuff.
I think you could just do it after the Kang Dynasty. Just push the show back. Like I know Sam Jackson's
Mm.
going to be too old by then or whatever the fuck. I know there's logistic problems, but like
Yeah.
just release it then or something. Like film it now, release it then. I don't know. Like it feels really odd and really bad to be like trying to be pulled both ways with this. And I'm
Yeah,
definitely
it's
more
very
on
odd
board.
placement.
Obviously, we've had more content for the multiverse, so I'm more on board with that one. But if you put me in a room and you were like, "Do you want to see multiverse stuff or do you want to see shapeshifter stuff like Skrulls?" I'd be like, I'd probably like in the MCU, in the context of the MCU, I'd probably rather see Skrulls.
Right.
But like in the context of Spider-Man, like Spider-Verse, I'd rather see
Yeah.
multiverse. Like, because I feel like again, the multiverse is just a phase that everyone's going through now.
Yeah.
Like we've had a lot of multiverse films, and Marvel are not top of the game when it comes to that. At least not the MCU Marvel.
Hmm.
And it feels really odd to just go like watch The Flash, and then 2 weeks earlier you watch Spider-Man, and then we've had like obviously No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, and it's like it's getting too much. And I know that's not their fault, but it's also their fault. Like I know you're
Yeah.
on strike, writers, and we're not saying we can do better. We're just saying what you're putting out, not good, man. This is not good. Andor, Tony Gilroy. Tell you what, just fucking get Tony Gilroy to write everything. Just get him to write everything. Because, bro, I was in the cinema for, well, context for audience, we're going to film a Mission Impossible episode as well. But,
Yep.
because that was a very good film. Spoilers. But, I saw the trailer for Tony Gilroy's new film as well, which is basically Rogue One, but with, like, different concepts. It just looks
What film
exactly
is it?
like Rogue One. I can't remember what it's called, but it looks really fucking good. Um, and I'm
Be
like,
into that.
just keep giving stuff to Tony Gilroy. just or like this is what I mean though as well. Marvel, it's hard to make excuses, right? Because you can go, oh, it's TV show and all this, but it's like they are Marvel Studios. They have access to more and better writers than anyone else on the planet.
Well, they have access to the best actors on the planet. Like, look at their freaking cast, mate. They've Ben Mendelsohn, Sam Jack, Emilia Clarke, Olivia
And
Colman. Like, that's a stat
yeah,
cast. You tell me you can't get a freaking good writer? Like, come on.
and a,
Like,
a rebuttal to that could be, oh well, writers don't always hit. Fair enough, but they haven't been hitting for a while in the MCU, and that's a problem. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm not gonna kick. I don't want to kick you when you're down, writers, but as Captain America said, do better.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Very.
not good. Um, and I do think the problem with these properties is bad writing. I will say that.
Oh,
Like,
or just direction in general as well. Because like,
yep,
my problem with the multiverse is that there's been so many multiverse stories, but none of them feel like they've tied in. Whereas it feels like to me there should have been one big thing, for example Loki, that causes all the multiverse stuff to happen simultaneously, and then we see the ramifications in all these different movies. Not, oh, there's a Doctor Strange one, and there's a Spider-Man one, and there's a Loki one, and there's a, it just feels so. It feels like what, you know, it feels like too much. But yeah, man. Anyway,
I think I need a correction.
yeah.
I don't think that new film is Tony Gilroy.
All right. Are you thinking of the
Am I thinking of the
the one?
director of Rogue One,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know which one you're talking about
Gareth
then.
Edwards?
Yeah, yeah. It's the robot looking one.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The creator, yeah, yeah.
That's it. Yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
yeah. No, that does
Correction.
look good.
Strike the
Yeah, that
record.
does look good.
That's Gareth Edwards. That's not Tony Gilroy.
I was gonna say close though, because some people argue Tony Gilroy secretly directed Rogue One. So,
Uh,
so, so.
well, either way,
Right.
that film looks hype and it looks good. And
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
it is or not, it doesn't. I don't know. But like,
The trailer looks good, so
but
we'll take that.
none of the Marvel trailers look like that. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But any rounding off points you'd like to make, Brandon? It's been quite a long episode actually.
Nah, I think we've summed up. Just wait for season, not season, episode 6, and then kind of review the whole thing as a whole. I think that'll be pretty decent. Because I think we've given the show a fair chance. I don't think we've been hating on it.
No,
If anything, we've been saying it's been one of the better ones. so,
which is sad because
so
it's sitting at
it's
like a
rough.
6 for me, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, I'm around there. I'm around there.
um,
It's a shame.
but I thought honestly, I thought it started off pretty strong this season. I liked the terrorist attack at the first episode, and I liked Maria Hill. I mean, it's a shame that she went out like basically nothing and nobody really cares anymore already. But like, fair. Like, I didn't really care about her, to be honest, in the first place.
Which like is mad because she's been there since 2012.
Yeah.
Like we should care, like we care more about Buddy Coulson from the Avengers when he dies. It's
He's
like
only in the
he's
first
only
one.
like
Yeah.
he's only phase one, mate. She's been in like all the phases. So she was at freaking Tony Stark's funeral. so like, we should care.
You know what I want? You know what I would do, right? If
Hmm.
I want that kid from Iron Man 3. I want him in the MCU again. I want, because I think that's a direct. I think one of my issues with Riri Williams in Black Panther was she has no through line to Robert Downey Jr. She has no through line to Tony Stark. So like,
Yeah.
even though his legacy's been carried on, and obviously you've got War Machine carrying on the legacy as well, but her picking up Tony's legacy feels really strange considering she never met the fucker. Like,
Yeah.
because so in Star Wars, the nice through line you have is the lineage from Yoda to Luke, right? Not Ray,
Yeah.
Yoda to Luke. She's not in that lineage, but Yoda to Luke, and even I guess Kylo Ren, right? You have that straight family tie basically of mentorship,
yeah. Hmm.
and like just do that. It's already set up for you in the MCU. Like, I know this is totally off topic, but like a lot of the things that they're picking up now and they're setting up new characters and they're making legacy characters, they just don't feel, they're not it, mate. They're not it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Well, that's obviously a much bigger point than just Secret Invasion, but that's just me moaning. So probably just cut the episode. Cut the episode here.
no worries.
But
No worries.
yep. Well, thank you for watching.
Yeah.
I I mean, I guess we had different opinions going in, and I think we've probably come out a bit closer together.
I think so. Yeah. So
I think mine's has maybe even gotten a little bit more negative as I've been talking about it. So
no, it's fair.
I don't know. Like, it's just I like a good moan sometimes as well. So
We do.
um, that's episode 5. Next week we will be on episode 6's heels, and we will be
The finale.
talking about the finale. So
And that'll be the end of our TV show series until Ahsoka. So happy days.
yep,
Get a little bit of a break.
a little. Oh mate, I can't wait for Ahsoka actually. But
Bro, those are gonna be freaking 2 hour long episodes each. That's guaranteed.
yeah. We need to pay. We need to start paying an editor. If you guys start watching our videos more, we can have longer videos and we'll pay an editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those 27 views for last episode,
So
keep them up.
like and
Keep
subscribe.
them
Yeah.
up.
Oh yeah. Keep that coming. We like that
Keep
momentum.
them.
Come on. The show might be shit, but
Oh,
we're getting our redemption. Come on.
absolutely.
Yeah. 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 So like, subscribe. Put in the comments if we're dumb, or who you agree with more. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And if you miss Robert,
Nobody misses Robert. I'm gonna say that.
he's probably not even watched up to this point.
No.
So
If you're watching this Robert episode, if you're watching this episode, Robert, we miss you, and I hope the
yeah,
audience does as well. But yeah, and if we get to the end of the season, which I think we are, before Robert can come back, we might do just like a roundup episode of his thoughts on the whole show, just as like a little epilogue to the season, maybe,
yeah,
just to get his little thoughts, I guess. But
that's a word in.
because this is a
But yeah.
3-man job.